Wanna know something, guys? There's a lot of stuff in life that I miss. Some of these things do actually center around competitive Pokemon. And of those, the main one I wish for is for Piloswine to still be a niche Pokemon in GCUU. Piloswine is one of the best Pokemon in GC underused, and a thoroughly defining, dominant, and dangerous Pokemon. It is able to defeat a ridiculous amount of Pokemon and provide an insane amount of defensive utility because its typing is just fantastic for the GC underused metagame, defensively and offensively. It is frequently a top 5 Pokemon in usage in GC underused team tournaments. This thing is fucking everywhere these days. However, for many years, Piloswine is not a top tier Pokemon. It was actually pretty obscure for a while, being seen as a slow, rather unreliable Pokemon that suffered from the popularity of Pokemon like Slowbro and Fire Blast Nidoqueen. It was still alright, because it did have a great typing that notably lacked the psychic weakness that Nidoqueen possessed, but it was still rarely seen. People hadn't really figured out its true potential yet, probably because people used mediocre sets without rest talk for most of the time. It was a solid B plus kind of Pokemon, but nothing outstanding. As we entered 2021, though, the first seeds of Piloswine Rise were planted. Some people had realised just how good a rest talk set with a sab combination of Earthquake and Ice Beam could be, since it had a ton of opportunities to come in and seriously limited the defensive counterplay after that. With how GC underused had developed, there was a lot of teams that had a seriously hard time with this Piloswine set. A lot of offensive teams were dropping water types around this time, which meant Piloswine dominated them. It still wasn't seen as the top tier Pokemon yet, but if just, one person could spread Piloswine propaganda or something, then maybe people could realise how dangerous Piloswine could be. And then that's exactly what happened. In October 2021, a user named Cherrybong, who had been spamming Piloswine for the last few months, posted a thread in the GSC forum discussing how good Piloswine could be, and the numerous advantages it had over Nidoqueen, who was at the time considered the best Pokemon in the tier. These advantages included the lack of weaknesses to Psychic, Ice, and Ground, a stronger Earthquake and Ice Beam, and Piloswine's better matchup against numerous top Pokemon, such as Hypno and Mr. Mime. There was a good amount of discussion on Piloswine in here, including pairing out a Lantern for the first time. I wonder if that combination's any good. This put Piloswine on way more people's radar, just in time for the next big GC underused team tournament, UU Snake Draft 2. This was the first time Piloswine showed up in a big way. It was a top 10 Pokemon in usage and saw some real success. While Nidoqueen was still used more, it was still a great showing for Piloswine. This solid showing though was nothing compared to the next few tournaments. About a month after UU Snake Draft ended, UUPL X started, and holy shit was Piloswine spammed this tour. It was a top 5 Pokemon in usage almost every week, and it completely dethroned Nidoqueen, who was getting barely any usage for the first few weeks of these tournaments. In the most recent GSCPL, Piloswine is currently the second most used Pokemon behind Quillfish. That just goes to show how splashable and dominant people have realised it is. People may be prepared for Piloswine a lot since it's so fucking common, but that doesn't mean it's still not good, because Piloswine is a bit of how should I say, a bullshit Pokemon with Ice Beam, Freeze and Earthquake crits, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyway, since, I spent the last few minutes discussing Piloswine's history, let's get into what it actually does and why it's so good. Piloswine's primary set is a Rest Talk set, with Earthquake, Ice Beam and Rest Talk, and man is it reliable as hell. Piloswine is an incredibly splashable Pokemon, being a solid check to top tier Pokemon like Hypno, Haunter, Electabuzz, Mr. Mime, Scyther, and even Granbull potentially. Piloswine has a powerful Earthquake that hits Pokemon like Haunter, Quillfish, Electabuzz and Nidoqueen super effectively. This is complemented extremely well by a decently strong Ice Beam, which hits flying and grass types that wouldn't fear Earthquake. Many GCUU teams stack Pokemon weak to Earthquake because of how well they synergize, meaning Piloswine commonly hits over half the opposing team super effectively. Because of this, Piloswine has very few reliable switch-ins. The list of switch-ins is pretty much limited to Gyarados, Blastoise, Slowbro, Pinsir, and to a much lesser extent, Slowking and Reflect Hypno. Aside from Gyarados, though, these Pokemon still take quite a lot from Earthquake. It's not an easy hit for them to take. Oh, and remember Ice Beam? I remember that I mentioned that move earlier. Yeah, it can freeze. So 10% of the time, these Pokemon just get frozen and now you're fucked. Haha XD. Piloswine has a ton of opportunities to come in, letting it either fish for freezes or go for earthquake crits against its few checks as they come in. Electric coverage is very common in GC underused, and being immune to it is a fantastic trait. Rest Talk also means Piloswine doesn't fear status, give it even more opportunity to come in. While Piloswine doesn't have any resistances aside from poison, which is like not using this tier aside from Dogshake Victory Well, its defensive stats are solid when backed with its high HP. Piloswine is just an amazing tank, bringing a ton of defensive and offensive utility while being very easy to spam and use. Piloswine fits perfectly on offensive teams, since running it means you don't have to use Hypno for Pokemon like Mr. Mime and Electabuzz. The most famous Piloswine team style though is the infamous Lantern plus Piloswine teams, which yours surely actually created around the time Piloswine started to rise. Soft brag. Anyway, Lantern is the perfect partner for Piloswine, being all of its primary checks bar Pinsir. Piloswine then beats Pokemon like Hypno and Ampharos that Lantern might struggle to break. One of the few fears when running Piloswine is Gyarados, and Lantern just shows up like, hey bitch, and permanently walls Gyarados. Lantern plus Piloswine formed an entire team style, a team style that is considered one of the best play styles in the entire metagame. This is also the team style where Ice Beam spam is most feasible, because with Lantern as a partner, Piloswine has more opportunities to fish for freezes. There are a few Pokemon who can break through the Lantern plus Piloswine core, and Lantern plus Piloswine teams always use stuff that can beat them. For example, Blastoise and Gligar are used on Lantern Pilo teams to beat Nidoqueen, while Jumpluff can be used to beat Pinsir. Piloswine plus Lantern structures are reliable, dangerous, and all around great. So yeah, Piloswine is absolutely amazing. As a matter of fact, a lot of people hate Piloswine. It isn't hard to see why really. You have this Pokemon with a ton of opportunities to come in and has very few switch-ins. And those switch-ins can just get fucked by like hacks and all. Piloswine is the primary reason Nidoqueen fell from the #1 spot, because it's just better against the overall metagame. It matches up better against all of, well let me say, Granbull, and Mr. Mime, and Haunter, and Electabuzz, and Scyther, and Hypno, and Jumpluff, and Quagsire, and even more shit. Sure, Nidoqueen has no counters, but it also has far less opportunity to come in, and much less defensive utility. Piloswine is just way easier to fit and make consistent use out of than Nidoqueen. If you compare how they match up against the actual tier, Piloswine comes out on top against a lot of the metagame. Now I've been raving about Piloswine for a while, but that doesn't mean it's perfect. It's pretty slow, so it can be hard to come in and rest its HP back at times. Its weakness to water also means that Pokemon like Qwilfish and Blastoise can easily 2-hit KO it. Piloswine has also suffered somewhat from its success, because Pokemon that can take advantage of it, like Pinsir and Gyarados, have greatly risen in usage. Players have become far more aware of Piloswine now, so some teams just don't have that much of an issue of it. The Lewis of Piloswine offenses have largely disappeared. But overall, Piloswine is just amazing. It's an amazing tank that fits onto so many teams and defines building in GSC underused. God damn, I was talking like a fucking robot. I can't wait to have this delicious drink that's sitting on my